took about 12 to 15 minutes to come in our direction, and we could see then that it was a V-shaped formation, and also that the ends of this V-shaped formation were very square. And then we saw it as it went completely overhead. It was extremely close to us, and it, as it went right over us, the right wing went directly over us and our house, and my husband and I were standing right there together, and the kids were out there.
Jim, do you have a sense of how high it was?
Yeah, I would say that it was in the neighborhood of 150 or so feet over the house.
That close. And moving how fast?
35 miles an hour.
And making any noise?
Not a single sound. That's what, you know, when it first started coming over, and it was so big, it was like 600 or 800 feet long, this one arm. The kids, when it was coming over and there was no sound, the kids started jumping up and down and thinking, hey, the Independence Day, you know. No, really, we got scared for a second, but it just passed over absolutely silently without a sound. There wasn't even a whooshing sound from any noise whatsoever. And you could see the shape of it as it went across the stars. You could not see any light reflecting from it, although there were 5 lights set up inside of it.
And Hal, let me ask you, how did it disappear slowly, or did it just go away all at once?
Oh no, it stayed. It went through the mountain gap, and continued. We watched it continue for about 5 or 6 more minutes as it went down over towards Phoenix.
Hal, what was your reaction to all this?
Well, I was really scared because this thing flying over your house when you get home, and it was so big because it covered up a couple of the blocks, and
let me ask Damien, did it look threatening to you, Damien?
It looked a little big, like a big old triangle, because the first thing I thought it was a stealth bomber. Got a little freaky, but then when it went by us, nothing happened, so we started chasing after it like there was nothing wrong.
All right, Michael Gillen, your theory?
Oh, boy. Well, you know, Charlie, maybe it was a flying saucer from another planet, as a lot of these folks believe. But maybe, and more likely, it was a military craft. You know, what interested me is that the air traffic controller said they didn't see it on the radar screen, even though they could see it with their eyes. So that reminded me of stealth. And then if you look at the stealth aircraft out there, you see that there is a very pronounced V shape to the wing shape of a stealth bomber. If you look at this computer-generated representation of the thing that was seen, look at that. Look at the similarity. So it could be either this generation or a later generation of stealth that's being tested out that can hover. Bottom line is scientists are no longer investigating UFOs. I think that's a shame, because this seems like a very intriguing situation. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the next best thing. We're going to take all the videotapes that were shown, that were taken by all the folks who saw this thing, and we're going to have them analyzed by a scientific lab, and we're coming back later this summer to show our viewers what we found. So at least we can find something about the truth.
Michael, I understand the stealth analogy, and yes, it could be a later generation of that being tested by the Air Force, but it was moving so slowly. And no noise.
Yeah, but the problem is that when you say it didn't make any noise and was moving slowly, presumes you really know what the distance and the size was, and that's a real tricky thing to do. The bottom line is the image of a quarter held at arm's length is exactly the same size as the image of the moon 250,000 miles away. How do you tell the difference? So even though these folks swear that it was 130 miles or that it went 35 miles an hour, try as you will, the human brain and the human senses are just not equipped to be that reliable. That's the problem.
All right, off to independent analysis you go with the videotapes.
This is intriguing.
I hope they can come up with something. It is fascinating.
So do I.
Yeah. And I thank the Lee family very much, their eyewitness account. We take a break. Mindy Moore.
Your thoughts now?
I'm pretty well convinced that this was an alien visitation craft. I'm pretty sure that it was interdimensional instead of interplanetary. And I'm quite sure that our federal government and our military knows exactly what it was.
Richard, you're an independent UFO investigator. Where does your investigation stand now on the events of March 13th?
Well, on that particular night, there was more than one event, and the first videos that came in were those famous arc of lights that appeared to be over the city. Later on, we found that that 10 o'clock event ended up being flares, which the National Guard had announced. However, the most important event is the one that Mike is describing, which is the formation, which started from Polden and ended up in Tucson and finally back to Kingman. It's an ongoing investigation. What is common with everything is people say it was large, it was slow, and was quiet. But then the descriptions are all over the board after that. It varies from where you are in the state.
How do you go about verifying whether or not something is a UFO?
Well, you work hard. Just like when we worked on the flare footage, we had about 7 pieces of footage there. We was able to triangulate. Plus, we were lucky to have an airline pilot mark us where he saw it.
Councilwoman Barwood, you've been trying to get an official investigation going. What sort of resistance have you met, and why is it important to you to have an official investigation?
Well, I was approached by a TV crew one day, and I had assumed that this event was already being investigated, and I was told that nobody would touch it. So I then asked the city if we could look into it, and after that, I've probably gotten beaten up pretty good, but one of the things that's puzzling to me is obviously this, whatever it was seen by so many thousands of people. My office has been absolutely overwhelmed with phone calls, and myself at home, from people that are very reputable and professional people, lawyers, doctors, pilots, retired military, active military, and they all say the same thing. This was the biggest thing that they had ever seen, ever. The retired pilots told me that there is no way that this object, as big as it was, flying as slow as it was, could have stayed in the air. And they all said the same thing, and I had calls all the way from by Prescott all the way to Tucson and through the valley, and just unbelievable amount of people. There was absolutely no sound, and it was moving very slow, and it was not at a very high elevation, between 1,000 and 5,000 feet elevation.
Councilwoman, real quickly, what happens next?
Well, I sent a letter to Senator McCain, and asked him to have the Air Force investigate. Excuse me. He then sent it to the head of the Armed Forces, who then apparently sent it to what's called the Bluebird Archives, and I guess from there they threw it out. So I don't know at this point. I'm going to be getting with some other people and, find out, okay, where do we go from here? Because it just seems really odd. I think at the very least it's a public safety issue, whatever this was, passed over the most dense areas of our city. And, I don't understand why nobody's concerned just about that.
All right, Councilwoman Barwood, Mike Forts, and Richard Motzer.